Hello everyone! Are you ready for an adventure? Because today we're going on an exciting tour of your new Class 9th English textbook, Bliss.
Let's just start with the cover, shall we? The title, Bliss, means perfect happiness, Ananda. And that's really the whole idea behind this book. Finding that joy in learning, in discovery, and in your own imagination.
You know, this book is about so much more than just passing your exams. It's a real chance to unlock your creativity and become a master of the English language. This year, we're going to turn your English lessons into a proper adventure.
So why was this book created? What's the big idea here? Let's take a quick look at the vision behind Bliss. The preface of the book puts it so beautifully. The whole goal is to help you flower and discover all your hidden talents. This book is really designed to make you fall in love with the English language, not just learn it.
All right, now for the really fun part, the stories. Get ready to be transported to different worlds and meet some characters you won't forget.
Our first story is about a man named Bhola Grandpa, a forgetful but super lovable character by Manoj, who always finds himself in the most hilarious situations. I'm sure we all know someone like him, right? The story is just full of suspense that'll keep you guessing. Just imagine, you're returning from a festival, Mela, late at night. The fog is thick all around you, and suddenly you hear this cry for help.
But the story has such a heartwarming and funny ending that will definitely leave you with a smile. And this is just one example, just a taste of the amazing storytelling you're going to find in Bliss.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We'll move from Bhola Grandpa's loud adventures and explore the world of poetry. Bliss has such a great collection of poems that will really make you think and feel.
This poem, it uses the image of a misty evening to create this feeling of peace and nostalgia. It's a truly beautiful, moving poem that's going to stay with you long after you've read it.
Isn't it just amazing how a few words can create such a powerful image? See, here, the mist isn't scary at all. It's a symbol of peace, of tranquility. It's a perfect example of how poetry can use language to create a very specific mood. So, we have stories and poems, which are great fun, of course, but you might be asking, how does this help me become a better English speaker and writer? Well, let's find out. You know, Bliss has a very clever way of teaching grammar. Instead of just making you memorize rules, you'll learn grammar naturally by seeing it used in the stories and poems you're already reading.
So you're not just reading for fun, you're also learning valuable grammar and writing skills at the exact same time. It's almost like learning without even trying.
And now that you've learned from the best writers, it's your turn to shine. Bliss gives you the chance to become a writer yourself and create your own stories. Bliss actually gives you a step-by-step guide to writing your own stories. The exercises are designed to help you brainstorm ideas, develop your characters, and create a really compelling plot.
These writing prompts are a great way to get your creative juices flowing. They're not just exercises, they're an invitation to let your imagination run wild and create your own unique stories.
So, what's the ultimate goal here? What's the great adventure that is waiting for you this year with Bliss?
This year, you are going on a journey of self-discovery. You'll explore new worlds, you'll learn new skills, and you will find your own unique voice as a writer.
And the teacher's guidelines for Bliss say it all. This book is designed to make you an active learner. You're not just a student. You are the hero of your own learning adventure.
So, what are you waiting for? Bliss is your passport to a whole world of adventure and creativity. Go on, open the first page and let your imagination take flight. The next great story is waiting to be written, and it's going to be written by you.
All right, for every teacher out there, this one's for you. Today, we're going to unlock a little secret, a kind of master key that can start any lesson, even on those days when you feel like you have absolutely nothing prepared.
Okay, picture this. The bell just rang. The kids are all looking at you. You've got the textbook, and you have about 60 seconds before you have to say something brilliant. What are those first words out of your mouth? I mean, that question alone can be pretty terrifying, right?
So, let's just dive right into that feeling. That little moment of panic that, let's be honest, every single teacher has felt. We're calling it the blank page. That anxiety of the unprepared moment. You look up from your desk and, yep, all eyes are on you. Every single one of them. They're waiting. They're expecting you to guide them, to teach them something cool, maybe even inspire them a little. And in that moment, wow, the weight of that can feel heavy. So you flip open the book, you stare down at the page, and you've got nothing. Zero.
The words just kind of blur together. Your brain, which was buzzing with ideas an hour ago, is now just a completely blank slate. And the fear isn't just about not knowing the content, is it? It's about not having a clue how to even begin.
In all this time, you can hear that clock on the wall. Tick, tock. Each sound seems to get a little louder, making the silence in the room feel even bigger, and the panic in your head just scream. The pressure is seriously on. But what if there was a way to diffuse that pressure? A key that could unlock this moment every single time.
And that brings us to the whole point of this explainer. The solution isn't to cram more facts or memorize another lesson plan. No, it's about a huge shift in how you think, moving away from just focusing on content and instead focusing on connection. We're talking about human connection. And really, what's so powerful about this is how simple it is. It's the art of finding the universal feeling buried inside of any topic. And I mean anything, a story, a poem, even a really dry grammar exercise, and tying it to something we've all felt before.
This quote absolutely nails it. It's about completely reframing that first question. So instead of panicking and asking yourself, what do I teach? You ask something way more powerful. What is the core feeling here? And how can I get my students to feel it too? And that leads us to this incredibly simple but super practical tool. It's a 3-question framework that is basically your master key to open the door to literally any lesson, any topic, anytime.
And here it is, just 3 little questions. Number 1, what is the central feeling here? Is it about confusion, joy, nostalgia? Number 2, you build a bridge to your students. You ask them, hey, when have we all felt something like this? And number 3, you open the door to the actual lesson itself. So, what might this text teach us about that feeling? You see, it's not a script you have to memorize. It's a compass. It just points you in the right direction.
Okay, so theory is one thing, but let's see this thing in action. We're going to really put this framework through its paces with 2 totally different lessons from the very same textbook.
So, on the left, we've got a funny little short story called Tales of Bhola Grandpa, and on the right, a really quiet, beautiful poem, Mild the Mist Upon the Hill, a comedy and a piece of classic poetry. Can one framework possibly handle both? Let's find out.
Okay, let's hit it with question 1. For Bhola Grandpa, the central feeling is pretty clear, right? It's that humor you get from being forgetful and confused. For the poem, it's something totally different. It's that peaceful, warm feeling of nostalgia, of looking back on a happy memory. And just like that, we've got the emotional core for both. Simple. Now, question 2. We build the bridge. For Bhola Grandpa, you could just ask the class, hey, have you guys ever completely forgotten something important, like your homework or where you left your phone? What did that feel like? And for the poem, you could try, have you ever just closed your eyes and thought about a really happy, peaceful memory from when you were little? Can you remember that warm feeling? And right there, by building that bridge, you've opened the door for question 3. Because all of a sudden, you're not just teaching a text anymore. You're starting a real conversation about our own lives. The story is no longer just about some forgetful old man. It's about our moments of confusion. And the poem isn't just about a misty hill. It's about our own feelings of nostalgia. So let's just zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. This framework, it's so much more than just a crutch to use when you're in a jam. It's actually a whole philosophy of teaching.
Every single lesson in this textbook, or any textbook for that matter, isn't just a chapter you have to get through. It's a doorway into a bigger conversation about what it even means to be human. And it doesn't matter if it's a story, a poem, or a grammar rule, there's always a shared human experience waiting in there to be discovered.
And really, that's the ultimate point. This isn't about being unprepared with the content. It's a tool that makes you profoundly prepared for the thing that actually matters most in teaching, to connect, to really, truly connect with your students. It shifts the entire goal from just transferring information to creating a shared understanding.
So the next time you're standing up in front of your class, holding that textbook, try not to see it as just a lesson to be taught. See it as a hallway full of doors. And the only question is, which one are you and your students going to open together today?
So today we're going to do something a little different. We are going to take a really simple story, and I mean really simple, and break it down to see just how much genius can be packed into a few short lines. Think of it as a masterclass in the art of storytelling.
You know, it's the one question every writer, every reader kind of obsesses over.
How do you grab someone from that very first sentence? Well, it turns out the answer might be hiding in a place you'd never ever expect to look.
And here it is. Our lesson today comes from Lesson 1 of the Class 9 English textbook for students in West Bengal. The story is called Tales of Bhola Grandpa by Manoj Das, and let me tell you, its opening is an absolute masterwork of writing.
Okay, so let's start right where any good story should, the beginning. Any expert writer will tell you, before you can get to the action, you have to build a world. You have to set the perfect scene.
Just listen to these opening 4 sentences. They seem so straightforward, right? But the author is doing so much work here, it's incredible. Let's actually break down what he pulls off. And this image, well, it brings it all to life, doesn't it? In just these few simple lines, we get a real sense of the place, the characters, and, believe it or not, even a little hint of what's to come. This isn't just painting a picture, it's world building at its most efficient.
Okay, so let's put on our teacher hats. Look what we've got. In just 29 words, we get our main characters, Bhola Grandpa and his wife. We know their location, western end of the village. We feel the humble atmosphere. And here's the clever part, the foreshadowing. The detail about the monkeys, and that the couple did not mind it, tells you everything you need to know about them. They're easygoing, maybe a little used to chaos. The stage is perfectly set.
Now hold on, because watch how the author just completely flips the script. In the very next lines, the whole feeling of the story changes. We go from this quiet, almost sunny little scene to something a lot more mysterious. And bam, just like that, the tone shifts. One moonlit night, the road was long and foggy. Suddenly, we've left that cozy little hut far behind. Now we're out in the dark, on a journey, and the language is getting way more atmospheric. This really captures that shift, right? I mean, think about those words. Moonlit can be beautiful, sure, but moonlit plus foggy? Now that's eerie. That long road makes you feel like the journey is endless. The author is basically leaning in and whispering to us, hey, pay attention, something is about to happen.
So how does he build this mood so fast? Well, he's using some classic tricks of the trade. First, sensory details. That fog, you can almost feel it, can't you? Then there's the pacing. That long road slows everything down, building that delicious suspense. And finally, the perspective is key. The narrator is up on someone's shoulders, just watching it all happen. He's a passive observer, just like us. We can't do anything but watch.
All right, we've got the scene, we've got the mood. Now comes the moment that kicks this whole story into high gear. And what's really amazing is how the author uses these super short, super simple sentences to create all the drama. Now, in storytelling lingo, this is what we call the inciting incident. It's the spark, the thing that lights the fuse and gets the story really going. And the author, Manoj Das, he delivers it in 3 short, sharp shocks. Here comes the first jolt. Suddenly, Bhola Grandpa let out a loud wail. Boom! The silence is just shattered. It's an immediate shock to the system. Next up, the reaction. Everyone in our party was surprised. This sentence is so simple, but it puts us right there with them. We feel their confusion, their surprise.
And finally, the consequence. Just one word. We halted. That's it. Everything just comes to a dead stop. The journey, the narrative, even your own breathing, it all just pauses on that one single powerful word. That's just masterful writing.
And that, right there, is the whole point. This is what great storytelling is all about. It's not about using complicated words, it's about using the right words. In just 10 lines, we've been given a whole world, a mood you can practically taste, and a mystery that you are desperate to solve. But of course, this is just the beginning of the story, right? That loud wail is just the first domino to fall in a whole series of Bhola Grandpa's hilarious and forgetful adventures. I mean, the rest of the story is filled with him running into tigers, dealing with pirates, all sorts of crazy situations. And it all stems from his simple, kind, and incredibly forgetful nature. That opening scene sets up the exact kind of wonderful chaos that makes his character so lovable. So I'm going to leave you with the very same question that's just hanging in the air at the end of that 10th line. That loud cry for help on a long, foggy road. What on earth could have caused it? What critical, important thing did Bhola Grandpa forget this time? I promise you, the answer is as simple as it is absolutely hilarious. Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a fantastic story by A.G. Gardiner called All About a Dog.
It's one of those amazing pieces that shows how a really small conflict, something that happens on a bus, can teach us so much about big ideas like rules, authority, and just, human nature. And for all you students joining in, this should look pretty familiar. We're pulling our entire lesson today straight from the Bliss English textbook for Class 9, the one prescribed by the West Bengal Board of Secondary Education. So we're going to break down the first few lines just like we would in class.
All right, so before we jump right into the story, it's really important to know a little bit about the person who wrote it. So let's ask, who exactly was A.G. Gardiner? Well, his full name was Alfred George Gardiner, and he was a really well-respected British journalist and author. But what's super interesting is his pen name, Alpha of the Plough. Think about it. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet, right? The beginning. And the plough is a famous group of stars. So the name itself kind of suggests he's looking at things from a very fundamental, but also universal, big picture point of view. And this quote from your textbook really gets to the heart of his writing style. He wasn't just telling stories for fun. He was teaching. His special talent was taking these deep, basic truths about life and presenting them in a way that was easy to understand and, believe it or not, pretty entertaining. That's the key to understanding this story.
And this brings us right to the main event. You've got this tiny little dog that ends up causing this huge problem. So the question Gardiner sets up for us is pretty clear. What happens when a strict, simple rule crashes head-on with someone who just will not back down? Okay, let's get into the opening lines, because a great writer doesn't just tell you what's happening, they make you feel like you're right there. And Gardiner? Oh, he is a master at setting the mood with just a few perfect words.
So, the story starts on a bus. Seems simple, right? But the real magic is in the details. As I read this first bit, I want you to really focus on the specific words Gardiner chooses to describe the night. And here it is. Perfect. He doesn't just say it was cold. No, it was bitterly cold. And that wind, it cut like a knife. Wow, that's a simile. And it's so powerful. It tells you the world outside isn't just uncomfortable, it's harsh, it's aggressive. The stage is perfectly set for a conflict. So, into this freezing, almost hostile setting, our main characters step onto the bus. And believe me, they are bringing the drama with them. This is where it all starts.
A few new passengers get on. We've got 2 women, a man, and then, here's the crucial detail, a younger woman holding a little Pekingese dog. Right there, that tiny animal is about to become the center of everything.
And just so we're all on the same page, your textbook has a handy definition in the word nest. A Pekingese is a small dog, flat face, long fluffy fur. So picture something really small and maybe even delicate looking. It just makes the huge fight that's about to happen seem even more absurd. So the conductor is just doing his job, taking fares. But then the author tells us his eye rests on the dog. He doesn't just glance at it, he stares. And he notices its beady-eyed look. The author tells us straight up that the conductor saw this as a chance to stir up some trouble.
And we even get to hear the conductor's own thoughts. I saw trouble coming up. This is huge. It means he wasn't just some guy enforcing a rule. The book says he had this general vague grievance about everything. So think about that. This isn't just a grumpy person. This might be someone who feels pretty powerless in his life. And that uniform, it gives him one little space where he's king. He's not just seeing a dog. He's seeing a challenge to his authority in his little kingdom.
And boy, he doesn't waste any time. The confrontation happens, and it's just as cold and sharp as that wind blowing outside. And there it is, the first command. Notice there's no please, there's no hey, the rule says. Just a direct, blunt order. You must take that dog out. That word, must, it's all about power. It leaves zero room for any kind of discussion.
So, the conductor has thrown down the gauntlet, but the response he gets? It's every bit as firm, every bit as stubborn. The battle lines are now officially drawn.
And she fires right back. I shall certainly do nothing of the kind. She doesn't hesitate for a second. And then, by offering her name and address, she's basically saying, I know my rights, I know the rules, and I'm ready for the consequences. She is not intimidated at all.
Now this is a really clever insight from the author. She wasn't caught off guard. She evidently expected the challenge and knew the reply. This tells us this probably isn't her first time having this argument. She came ready for a fight.
And just watch how the conductor escalates things here. He repeats himself, but then he adds 2 little words that change everything. That's my order. See what he did?
It's not about the company's rule anymore. Now, it's personal. It's a direct test of his power against her will.
And this just sums up the standoff perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you have the conductor's rigid command, which is all about his authority. And on the other side, you have the lady's absolute refusal, which comes from her belief that the rule is just plain wrong in this situation. They're at a complete deadlock.
So, as you can see, this really isn't a story about a dog at all, is it? Gardiner uses this tiny little argument on a freezing bus to get us thinking about something much bigger. When should rules just be followed, no questions asked? And when should we maybe use a little bit of common sense and goodwill? We're only at the beginning, but the main theme is already crystal clear. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Hello, students, and welcome! Today, we're opening our Bliss textbook to explore a poem that so perfectly captures a season of breathtaking beauty. We are diving into John Clare's Autumn, a true masterpiece, to see how just a few simple words can paint such a vivid and moving picture. So, our guide for this lesson is the celebrated English poet John Clare. Through his eyes, we're going to experience a really unique vision of the world around us. This poem is a real gem, and I can't wait to see what we discover in it together. Now, before we start breaking it all down, let's just experience the poem first. I want you to listen closely to the words. Just let the sounds and the images of Clare's autumn come alive in your mind. I love the fitful gust that shakes the casement all day, and from the mossy elm tree takes the faded leaves away, twirling them by the window pane with 1,000 others down the lane. I love to see the shaking twig dance till the shut of eve, the sparrow on the cottage rig, whose chirp would make believe. All right, what a beautiful start, isn't it? But what is really going on in these opening lines? You see, Clare is not just describing a scene. He's inviting us to feel it with him. He's painting a picture of autumn that's about what he sees, what he hears, and what he feels on his very skin. He starts with the wind, but I want you to notice the very specific words he chooses, a fitful gust. What does that one phrase tell us about the kind of day he's experiencing? So, fitful means something that stops and starts. It's not a regular, steady breeze. No, this is a sudden, powerful blast of wind that comes and goes. You can almost feel it, can't you? And this powerful, unpredictable wind is shaking the casement, that's an older word for a window frame, all day long. So it's not just happening outside, it's creating a sound, a constant reminder of nature's raw energy right inside the house. Now look at the verb he uses. The wind takes the leaves. It's not passive. The wind is presented as an active force, an agent of change, deliberately pulling these old, faded leaves from the mossy elm tree. He then uses this wonderfully energetic word to describe their movement, twirling. It means to spin round and round, and you can just picture that chaotic, dizzying motion, can't you? And this just illustrates the scene so brilliantly. It's not just one or two leaves, but thousands of them in a chaotic, beautiful dance, spinning past the window and sweeping all the way down the lane. Okay, now watch this carefully. See how the poet shifts his focus. He moves from the grand, powerful force of the wind, affecting the whole landscape, down to a single, much more delicate detail. Notice he says it again, I love. This time he is watching a tiny twig dance in that same wind until evening, which he so beautifully calls the shut of eve, meaning the end of the day. And then his eyes land on a small bird, a sparrow, sitting on the cottage rig, which simply means the roof of a cottage. From the vast power of the wind to this one small, living creature. It's a lovely shift in focus. And it's not just the sight of the sparrow that gets his attention, it's the sound. That small chirp, he suggests, is so full of life that it has the power to change his very perception of reality. He leaves the thought unfinished, make-believe what? But the idea behind it is so powerful. In the middle of a dying season, this tiny bird's cheerful song is an act of defiance. It is a sound so hopeful it could almost make you believe that spring is not so far away, that life is resilient, even as the world around it fades. So after looking at all these images, the powerful wind, the dancing leaves, the hopeful sparrow, what is the main feeling, the main mood the poet is trying to share with us? And this, you see, is what makes Clare's vision so remarkable.
While so many poets see autumn as a season of sadness and decay, a metaphor for things ending, Clare finds the opposite. He doesn't mourn it, he celebrates its wild energy and beauty. He finds joy in every single one of these details, from the powerful gusts of wind shaking his window to the small, defiant chirp of a bird on a roof. Everything is alive and interesting to him.
And just in case we missed it, he makes his feelings absolutely clear by repeating that phrase, I love. This repetition is a very deliberate choice. It's hammering home his deep, personal affection for a season that for him is all about joy, not sorrow. It's what our textbook perfectly calls a pen picture. He is using words just like a painter uses a brush, isn't he? He is capturing the soft or mellow beauty of an autumn day in the English countryside. And this leaves us with a final question to think about. What does it say about a person who can find such happiness and life in a season of decay and change? It shows us a unique way of looking at the world, finding beauty not just in beginnings, but in endings too. Hello, students, and welcome! Have you ever thought about what really goes on in a zoo when all the visitors have gone home? Well, today we are diving into a beautiful piece from your Bliss textbook, A Day in the Zoo, by the famous naturalist Gerald Durrell. Now, this isn't just a story. It's really an invitation to see a very familiar place through a completely new pair of eyes. So, let's get started. Just think about it for a second. I'm sure most of you have been to a zoo, right? Maybe even the Alipore Zoo right here in Kolkata. What's that like? You've got the huge crowds, the excitement, the noise, you see the tiger for a little while, then you move on, you spend a few hours, and then you head home. That's the normal experience, isn't it? But Gerald Durrell, he wants us to see something totally different. He completely flips the script. We're not just looking at the zoo from the outside in for a couple of hours. No, we're getting the view of someone who actually lives there. Someone for whom the zoo is not just a place of work, but it's their home. It's a much, much more personal point of view. Okay, so let's really break this down. From the very first sentence, Durrell sets up this really powerful contrast. This idea of two completely different worlds, it's the absolute key to understanding the whole piece. Just listen to how he does this. It is one thing, and it is quite another thing. With these simple phrases, he draws a sharp line in the sand. On one side, you have us, the public, the ordinary visitor. And on the other side, you have the insider, the owner. Two totally separate worlds in one sentence. So what does living in it actually mean? Well, for one, it's a huge responsibility. I mean, you're on duty 24/7. But it also comes with this incredible privilege. You get to see the zoo wake up. You get to watch the animals long before the first visitor even thinks about buying a ticket. This is where the real connection happens. And now, this is where the magic begins. The author pulls us right into this special world. And how does he do it? By painting a picture of those first, quiet, almost sacred moments of a new day at the zoo. Now pay close attention to the timing. He doesn't start at 10 a.m. when the gates are open and the crowds rush in. No, he starts just before dawn. This is a time of absolute peace, a time that the public never, ever gets to see. This is the insider's time. And just listen to the beautiful language. It's incredible. The sky isn't just yellow, it's tinged with yellow, just a slight hint of color. And what wakes you up? It's not some loud alarm clock, it's the sound of bird song. See? Right away, Durrell is using our senses, sight and sound, to pull us deeper and deeper into his world. All right, now let's see how Durrell builds on this because he is an absolute master of using sound. He doesn't just say, oh, the birds are singing. No, he makes us hear the entire orchestra of the morning. He layers the sounds one on top of the other. Just listen. First, you hear the gentle robin. Then a loud, almost excited cry from a thrush just bursts through. And then you hear the turicos. It's like a conductor bringing in different parts of an orchestra to build this amazing symphony of sound. It starts soft, and it just keeps building and building. And this is where his word choice is so, so important. He describes the sound as hoarse, which, as you know, means rough sounding. So the turaku's call, it isn't sweet and pretty like the robin song. It's a different kind of sound. It's deep and a little bit scratchy. This one word, hoarse,
makes the whole description so much more vivid, so much more real. I mean, look at this. This is the perfect example of Durrell's incredible language. Just look at those adjectives: rich, fruity, hoarse. I mean, think about it. Would you normally use the word fruity to describe a bird's call? Probably not. But by using these words, he makes us, the reader, hear exactly what he hears every single morning. It's brilliant. So let's just recap what's happened here. In just a few lines, Durrell has totally changed our perspective. We're not just students reading a book anymore. He's actually given us this privileged insider's ticket into his world. So how did he do it? It's like a little magic trick. First, he created that sharp contrast between the visitor and the owner. Then he puts us right there with the owner, waking up at the crack of dawn. He made us see that first little touch of yellow in the sky, and then he let us listen as that morning chorus builds, sound by sound. By the end of these few lines, you're not an outsider looking in anymore. You are on the inside. And this, really, is the gift Durrell gives us in these opening lines. It's a secret peek into the zoo's private life. It's a moment that only belongs to the animals and the people who truly live side by side with them. It's a pretty special feeling, isn't it? So that's our key takeaway for today. Durrell has handed you a special insider's pass. So as you continue reading the lesson, I want you to hold on to this question. What happens next? How does the rest of the day look from this amazing behind-the-scenes point of view? Keep that in your mind and enjoy the rest of this wonderful story. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, students. Today, we're going to dive into a fantastic science fiction story by the great Ray Bradbury, All Summer in a Day. Now, this is a story that kicks off with one single unforgettable line and then just blossoms into this powerful look at memory, hope, and, well, even human cruelty.
Okay, so if you have your Bliss English textbook, please open it up. We're looking at Lesson 5 on page 34. The setting, the place where this story happens, is absolutely crucial to everything. So let's jump right in, shall we? So Bradbury takes us all the way to the planet Venus. But listen, this is not the Venus you read about in your science books. No. This world is defined by, it's dominated by one relentless, overwhelming force.
And there it is. The story opens with this single, staggering sentence, just 8 words. But with these 8 words, Bradbury sets the entire mood. This isn't just a weather report you see, it's a statement about a whole way of life, an unending, oppressive state of being.
Now, let's see how Bradbury actually does this. How does he build this atmosphere, using language to make the rain feel like more than just water? He makes it feel alive, almost like another character in the story.
7. I want you to mark this number, students. 7. It's a number that just hangs over this entire story. 7 long years without seeing the sun. Can you just imagine a childhood where the only weather you've ever known is a constant drumming downpour?
You see how Bradbury hammers home the sheer scale of it? He uses phrases like thousands upon thousands of days. That repetition, it makes the time feel infinite. And he uses such strong, violent words like gush. This isn't some gentle shower. It's a relentless, forceful flood. So this rain is not just falling from the sky. It's a world-shaping force. It is so powerful that it creates tidal waves, constantly changing the very shape of the land they live on. The environment itself is in a permanent state of violence.
In this constant destruction, it's not just on the coastline. No, it defines the entire ecosystem of Venus. It creates this brutal, super-fast cycle of life and death.
And just consider this line. Why do you think Bradbury repeats the word thousand here? He's not trying to give us an exact number, He's using it as a literary tool to give us a sense of this endless, almost hopeless cycle. This device, my dear students, is called hyperbole. It's a deliberate exaggeration to really emphasize a point, and here, Bradbury is using it to paint a picture of a planet that is just caught in this incredibly violent and rapid cycle of growing, only to be immediately crushed again.
And this brilliantly illustrates that for the people here, especially the children, this brutal cycle, it's not a series of disasters. It's just the way of life. This level of chaos is their normal. It's the only reality they have ever known.
So a big question comes up. Who would choose to live in such a harsh, unforgiving world? Well, as it turns out, they didn't evolve here. They are outsiders. They are settlers from a very, very different place. So,
This is a very crucial point. The inhabitants are human pioneers, colonists from Earth trying to build a life on a planet that is totally alien to them. In a way, they are the real aliens in this story. And this creates such a profound divide, doesn't it? The parents, they remember Earth. They remember a world full of sunshine and blue skies and warmth. But their children have known nothing but the constant drumming of the rain. It's a generation gap, really, but played out on a planetary scale, a conflict between memory and experience. And yet, despite this hostile environment, they persist. This small line speaks to a core theme in the story: human resilience. You know, they build schools, homes, a whole society in underground cities, like a fragile bubble of normalcy in a totally chaotic world. And this brings us to a crucial turning point. After all this description of the oppressive rain, the story suddenly shifts. It signals that something big, something important is about to change. The long, flowing paragraphs just disappear, and they're replaced by short, sharp dialogue. It starts with this one single loaded word. This change in pace is so jarring, and it immediately builds this palpable sense of suspense. You can feel it, can't you? And the reply is just as clipped, just as simple. But packed into that one little word are 7 years, thousands upon thousands of days of waiting, of dreaming, of hoping for one singular, miraculous event. So I leave you with this question. After a lifetime of rain, for these children of Venus, what on earth could possibly be worth waiting for? The answer, my students, is the very thing they can't remember, the one thing the rain has denied them, the sun. And its brief 2-hour appearance is an event that is going to change absolutely everything. Now, read on to find out what happens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a truly lovely poem by Emily Jane Brontë, Mild the Mist Upon the Hill. We'll explore how a simple, misty landscape can bring back such powerful memories and feelings. So, are you ready? Let's begin.
Now, as you all know, this poem is Lesson 6, taken directly from your Class 9 Bliss textbook for the West Bengal Board. So please feel free to follow along as we break it down together and uncover its magic. You know, to really get the feel of a poem, it always helps to know a little bit about the poet herself, doesn't it? So before we jump into the lines, let's have a quick look at who Emily Jane Brontë was. So Emily Jane Brontë was a fantastic English poet and novelist. Now, most people know her for her one and only novel, the very famous Wuthering Heights. It's an absolute classic. But her poetry is just as powerful. And in this poem, we'll see how she uses the scenery around her to travel back in time, all the way to her childhood. All right, then, let's get into the poem itself. We're going to start with the very first stanza. We'll go through it line by line to really see how Brontë creates such a strong atmosphere with her words. The poem begins, Mild the mist upon the hill, telling not of storms tomorrow. No, the day has wept its fill, spent its store of silent sorrow. Right away, you can feel the mood she's setting, can't you? It's calm, it's gentle. So what's the first feeling we get here? It's peace, isn't it? The mist is mild. It's not a scary, thick fog. It's gentle. And it's a sign that tomorrow isn't going to be stormy. It's a sign of calm. Now, let's look at that line. The day has wept its fill. It's such a beautiful way of putting it. Can a day actually cry? Well, no, of course not. This is a literary device we call personification, giving human qualities to something that isn't human. It makes us feel that the sadness, the rain is over. And your textbook's word nest helps us here. Fill simply means to make full. So the day has cried its full share of tears. The rain is done. The silent sorrow has been spent. There's nothing left but peace. And it's this quiet, peaceful scene that acts as a trigger. Watch what happens next. The poem takes a very sudden and important turn from the present moment into a memory. And just like that, the mist sends her straight back in time. Did you notice that word, oh? It shows that sudden rush of feeling, you know? It's not something she decided to do. The memory just washed over her, and suddenly she is a child again. And where does this memory take her? Not just to any random place, but to a very specific, safe place. Her childhood home. under the safety of her father's sheltering roof, right there by the old hall door. It just goes to show how our memories are so often tied to feelings of safety and comfort. Now, you might have noticed a curious little word here, neath. Poets often use these kinds of shortened words to keep the rhythm of the poem flowing nicely. So any guesses what neath is short for? That's right, it's in your word nest. It's simply a poetic way of saying beneath. So she's remembering being safe and sound beneath her father's roof. The word itself feels so cozy and sheltered, doesn't it? Okay, so in these next few lines, the poet does something really clever. She's been in the past, in her memory, and now she gently brings us and herself back to the present, connecting that old feeling to the new scene. See how she says, I watch this cloudy evening fall? That one word, this, pulls us right back to the present moment. She's watching the very same day that sparked the memory come to a peaceful end. And what a beautiful image to come back to. She doesn't just see mist, she sees blue mists, sweet mists. Can you feel how gentle and pleasant that is? They're covering the distant mountains. It's just lovely. Now, here's a word we probably don't use every day, pall. Based on how it's being used here, the mist is covering the mountains. What do you think it could mean? Well, let's look at our word nest again. A pall is a thick cloud. So can you just picture it? The sweet blue mist is lying over the mountains like a soft, thick blanket. What a perfectly peaceful image to leave us with. So, after looking so closely at these first 10 lines, what are the big ideas we should remember? Let's do a quick recap of the main points. Okay, so first, we've learned that the mist isn't scary. It's a symbol of peace after the rain, which she calls a silent sorrow. Second, we've seen how something in nature, just a bit of mist, can unlock a really powerful memory. For her, that memory is of childhood, which she remembers as a time of complete safety. And finally, the real genius here is how the poem connects a feeling she has today to a special place from her past. And so I'll leave you with this thought. For Emily Brontë, the trigger was the mist. What about for you? Maybe it's the smell of the earth after the first rain, or a particular song you hear on the radio. What sight or sound or smell from today can take you back to your own days of youth? It's something interesting to think about. Thank you for joining me today.
So, what can one of literature's biggest troublemakers teach us about, well, creative problem solving? That's what we're going to dig into today. We're looking at an absolute masterclass in mischief from the one and only Mark Twain, and we're seeing it all through the eyes of his most famous character, Tom Sawyer. I mean, doesn't that just say it all? We're starting with a feeling that is so relatable. Right out of the gate, Twain just grabs us with this universal truth. I mean, who hasn't felt that Monday morning misery, right? This one little sentence, it sets the entire stage for the drama that's about to go down. All right, so for this, we're going to do a real deep dive. We're talking a close reading of just the first 10 sentences of this classic scene. And you'll see, it's pretty incredible how a master like Twain can build a whole world of character and conflict in just a handful of lines. Okay, so before we get into Tom's actual scheme, let's quickly set the stage. We need to meet our two key players here, the mischief maker and, of course, the literary master who brought him to life.
So yeah, Mark Twain. His real name was Samuel Clemens. And he wasn't just a writer, he was, a giant in American literature. And this scene we're looking at, it's from his super famous novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, a book that honestly didn't just tell a story, it helped shape how America even saw itself. All right, let's get right to the problem, the core conflict that kicks this whole thing off. And it's a feeling I think we all know perfectly well, that awful dread of a Monday morning. And just listen to the words Twain uses here. They're so powerful. He doesn't just say, Tom didn't like school. No, he calls it slow suffering. Wow. That specific choice of words, that's what makes us feel Tom's dread. It totally raises the stakes right away. And boom. This one line lays out the entire plan. What's Tom's goal? To stay home from school. What's his only way to get there? Well, he thinks it's being sick. The objective is crystal clear, the challenge is set, and you can just hear the engine of the plot starting to turn. Okay, so he's got his goal. What does our clever hero do? He doesn't just lie there hoping. Oh no! He gets right to work.
He starts this methodical, almost scientific search for a way out.
And the key word right here is investigating. Think about that. Tom isn't just daydreaming. He is actively scanning his body, almost like a detective looking for clues or a doctor trying to make a diagnosis. He's treating himself like a puzzle that needs to be solved, just looking for any little flaw he can use.
And when you actually break it down like this, his thinking is, well, it's surprisingly organized. It's basically a strategic plan, right? He's got the goal, stay home. He's got the strategy, pretend to be sick. And he's got the method, find an ailment. I mean, for a kid trying to get out of school, this is incredibly structured.
All right, so let's watch how his first plan unfolds. And this isn't just a simple, he tried, he failed thing. No, Twain turns this into a whole mini drama. You get hope, you get failure, all in just a couple of sentences.
And here we go. This is the moment of discovery. For just a split second, Tom thinks he's got it. He's found his golden ticket out of school, a stomachache. You can almost feel his excitement, right? The relief.
But this is what's so clever about Twain's writing. He builds up that hope, only to just smash it a second later. First, Tom's feeling hopeful, but then it all just falls apart. The symptoms get feeble, great word, and then they're gone completely. It is a total emotional roller coaster, and it's all packed into just a few words. Amazing.
So just like that, we've hit a crisis point. Plan A is a total bust. He's right back where he started, stuck in bed on a Monday morning. School is just around the corner. So, what's a boy to do now? But come on, a character like Tom Sawyer, he's not going to give up that easily. In fact, for him, failure just seems to be fuel for his creativity. And this is where Twain really starts to masterfully build the suspense for what comes next.
It's just 3 little words. Tom thought further. So simple, right? But it is packed with suspense. Twain just makes us pause. We know something else is coming. You can't help but lean in, just waiting to hear what new, brilliant scheme is brewing in that head of his.
And then, there it is, the turning point. That one word, suddenly, it's just pure narrative magic. It's that flash of inspiration, that aha moment that changes everything. A whole new possibility has just popped into his head, and you can bet it's going to be way more creative than a fake stomachache.
And that's exactly where Twain leaves us hanging. We saw the first plan crash and burn spectacularly, and now we've seen the spark of a new, probably much more daring idea. So the question we're left with is, what masterful, what mischievous plan has Tom Sawyer just cooked up to finally escape his Monday morning?
Have you ever stopped to think about what's really going on inside a school textbook? You know, it's not always just about grammar rules or historical dates. A lot of the time, there are these carefully chosen stories that are designed to teach us something, well, something much bigger. Today, we're going to peel back the cover on one of these books and find 2 pretty amazing tales hiding in plain sight. So what you're looking at here is Bliss. It's an English textbook for 9th graders in West Bengal. And yeah, it might look pretty standard, but it's our key to understanding how education can work in some really cool ways. Because tucked away inside these pages are lessons that go way, way beyond just learning a language.
And that really brings us to the big question we're tackling today. How do these simple stories, the kind you just skim over in a textbook, actually teach us how to be human? How do they end up shaping our whole view of the world, of other people, and when you get right down to it, ourselves?
To figure that out, we're going to dive into the first 2 lessons in this very book. They sit right next to each other. Tales of Bhola Grandpa and All About a Dog. And let me tell you, they could not be more different. And, as you're about to see, that's exactly what makes them so powerful. So let's meet our main characters. In one corner, you've got the super charming but incredibly absent-minded Bhola Grandpa. His biggest problem is his own memory, which, believe it or not, gets him into some pretty hilarious scrapes with tigers. And in the other corner, a really strict bus conductor whose biggest issue is a tiny little dog, which kicks off this whole debate about rules versus just common sense. All right, first up, let's talk about the forgetful grandpa. This guy, Bhola Grandpa, is the perfect example of human fallibility. You know, the harmless mistakes we all make. His entire life is basically just one comical mix-up after another, all because he can't seem to remember anything. Okay, so get this. In one story, he's coming back from a festival, and he's tightly holding on to his grandson's little fingers, or at least he thinks he is.
Someone asks him what he's holding onto so tightly, and he looks down and realizes he let go of the kid ages ago. So they all rush back, and where do they find his grandson? Totally safe, just chilling out under a cow's belly. It's just pure, innocent chaos.
But the absolute peak of his forgetfulness? Oh man, it happens when he runs into a royal Bengal tiger. So he scrambles up a tree and just waits there all night. At dawn, he climbs down, sees a group of men, and casually asks them for some water, completely utterly forgetting that the massive tiger is still right there, stretching out just below him. He only remembers the tiger was even there when he happens to look back at it. I mean, his forgetfulness is practically a superpower.
And this is how his story ends up. He lives all the way to 95, and his wife explains his death with this just perfect, bittersweet line. It sums up his entire character, a man defined by a simple, harmless, and just deeply human flaw.
Now, let's switch gears completely. We're entering a totally different world with our second story, The Conductor and the Dog. Picture this. We're on a double-decker bus on a freezing cold night. The wind is so sharp it feels like a knife. The whole scene is just set up for a fight, not a funny story. So, a young woman gets on the bus with this tiny little Pekingese dog. The conductor, who just seems like he's having a really bad day, immediately focuses on it. He insists that the dog has to go to the open-air top deck, right into the freezing, horrible weather. The woman obviously refuses. She says it would probably kill her, let alone her tiny dog. And this is the conductor's whole attitude. That's my order. There's absolutely no room for discussion, no empathy for the woman or the animal, no thinking about how bitter cold it is. There are only the rules, his rules, and he is determined to enforce them, no matter what. From there, the whole situation just falls apart. The conductor stops the bus entirely, the other passengers all take the woman's side, the police even get called in, but this conductor, he will not budge. The entire bus system grinds to a halt, all because of one man's incredibly rigid obsession with a tiny rule.
So let's step back for a second. What do we got here? We've got innocence versus rules. In one story, you have a man whose personal flaws create these funny, harmless situations. In the other, you have a man whose strict obsession with rules creates tense public chaos. Let's really put them side by side.
When you lay them out like this, the sheer genius of the textbook becomes so clear. The Bhola Grandpa story, that's all about internal conflict, man versus himself, and we're sort of taught to laugh along with it, to be forgiving. But the story about the dog is all external. It's man versus society. And there, we're invited to be critical, to think about inflexible authority and why compassion matters. But here's the thing you have to remember. This is an English textbook. All these deep moral lessons are wrapped around a really practical goal, which is teaching the nuts and bolts of a new language. And the way this book does it, it's just brilliant. So, take this really simple sentence from that first story. Bhola had seen a tiger. Seems straightforward, right? It's just a key plot point, describes what happened. But it's actually doing so much more work than that. See, that sentence isn't just there to move the story along. It has been carefully, deliberately placed there as a grammar lesson in disguise. It's setting up a specific, and let's be honest, often tricky concept that the students are about to learn right after the story ends. And here it is, the proof, right in the exercises. That exact sentence, Bhola had seen a tiger, becomes the main example that students use to practice changing from active voice to passive voice. The story gives them this memorable, kind of funny context that makes an abstract grammar rule actually stick. So this is the real takeaway. The textbook is working on two powerful levels at the same time. It's not just teaching what words mean, but it's also teaching how they can make us feel and what kinds of worlds they can build. You can really think of them as dual engines. One engine is building those practical language skills, vocabulary, sentence structure, active and passive voice. But the other engine is building emotional intelligence. It's teaching empathy, the value of humor, the dangers of being too rigid, and the importance of compassion. It's just an incredibly smart way to teach. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. These aren't just stories for 9th graders in West Bengal. They're really a model for how all of us learn. So take a second and think back. What's one story from your own school days that has really stuck with you? And what hidden lesson do you think it was really trying to teach?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Have you ever stood at a point in your life, a crossroads, and wondered which path to take? Well, today we're going to dive into a beautiful poem that talks about exactly that. It's a story about 3 ships, 3 different journeys, and the choices that define everything. So, as you can see, our lesson for today is from your Class 9 English textbook. We're looking at Lesson 9, The North Ship, written by the wonderful poet Philip Larkin. It's really a fantastic poem because it uses very simple pictures, simple images to talk about some very big ideas in life. The whole poem boils down to this: 3 journeys, 3 destinies, 1 big choice. It seems so simple, nah? Just 3 ships sailing out to sea. But, and this is the important part, you must not get fooled by this simplicity. Each ship, you see, is a symbol for a different path in life, a different choice we might make. And let me tell you, not all of them have a happy ending. So, before we set sail with these ships, let's first get to know the man who wrote this beautiful poem. Who was the captain of this creation? Let's find out a little bit about Philip Larkin. So, Philip Larkin, a very, very famous English poet and novelist. Now, what's so interesting is that The North Ship was his first book of poetry. So right from the beginning, his talent was there for everyone to see. He became really famous later, in 1955, with a collection called The Less Deceived. And get this, in 1984, he was offered the position of Poet Laureate, which is a huge, huge honor. But he said no, he declined it. That tells you something about him, doesn't it? His real gift was taking these big, complex emotions we all feel and putting them into very simple, easy-to-understand words. And that is exactly what we are going to see in this poem. Okay, so now that we know the poet, let us begin our journey. The first stanza is so important because it paints the entire picture for us. I want you to pay very close attention to how carefully Larkin chooses every single word. It's brilliant. The poem begins very simply with a personal observation. I saw. So the poet is making us stand right next to him, on the shore perhaps, and we are both watching these 3 ships as they start their big adventure. Now listen to this next line. Over the sea, the lifting sea. That word, lifting, what a fantastic word to use. It gives you this feeling of hope, of optimism, doesn't it? It's almost as if the sea itself is helping the ships, lifting them up and pushing them towards our future. It's a very positive image. And then he adds, and the wind rose in the morning sky. So just picture it. We have this hopeful sea, a strong wind coming up, and it's a new day, the morning. Everything seems perfect, nah? The stage is set for a great, successful journey. Anything seems possible at this moment. But then we get this very important clue, and one was rigged for a long journey. This tells us that one of these ships was special. It was prepared differently. It was built for a much bigger challenge. The poet is giving us a hint here about what's to come. So keep this particular ship in your mind, okay? It's very important. So we have a perfect morning, full of hope. We have 3 ships, and it feels like anything can happen. But where are they going? Well, as we are about to see, not all journeys are the same. Their fates are going to be very, very different. Okay, so the first ship, it turns towards the west. And look at the words the poet uses for the sea now. It's the running sea. Before it was lifting, now it is running. This suggests speed and easy, smooth movement. This journey seems to be very easy, very successful. And look, the wind does all the work. The ship was all possessed by the wind. It was just carried. There's no struggle, no effort needed at all. It's just an easy ride. And where does it go? To a rich country. So this represents a life of comfort, of easy success, no problems. But now, watch how suddenly the whole mood changes. The second ship, it turns east. And the sea, it's completely different. Now it is the quaking sea. Just feel that word, quaking. It's full of fear, danger, trembling. Suddenly, all that hope from the morning is gone, completely vanished. This chart really shows the difference so clearly, doesn't it? Look at this. For the first ship, the sea was running, but for the second, it was quaking. For the first ship, the wind carried it like a friend, but for the second ship, the wind hunted it like a beast. Just imagine that. Nature is not a helper here, it is a predator, an enemy. The first ship reaches a rich country, but the second one ends up in captivity. These are not just 2 journeys, they are 2 opposite ways of life. One is easy success, the other is terrible failure. You know, the real magic of this poem is in the words Larkin chooses. Every word is so powerful. So let's look at some of the key words from our textbook's word nest to understand them better. So the first word is rigged. Remember this from the first stanza? And one was rigged for a long journey? This means it was specially equipped, specially prepared. It wasn't just any ship. It was designed for a purpose, for a difficult mission, right from the very start. Next, we have quaking. Now, your textbook says it means stirring. And yes, that's true. But in the poem, the feeling is much stronger, isn't it? It's not a gentle stirring like stirring tea. It's more like the ground quaking in an earthquake. It's a violent, dangerous trembling. And the last word here is captivity, which means imprisonment. This is such a final, terrible word. It's a dead end. The second ship's journey didn't just have some problems. It ended in a complete loss of freedom, a total failure. So let's just pause for a moment. Out of the 3 ships that started on that beautiful morning, we now know the fate of 2. One found wealth and comfort, the other found a prison. So, to quickly recap what we've seen, 3 ships set sail on a hopeful morning. The first ship, heading west, found easy success. The second ship, heading east, was hunted down and trapped. These are 2 very different paths in life. But let's not forget, what about the third ship, the one that was rigged for a long journey? So the first 2 ships, you could say, they took the obvious paths, east and west. One was easy, one was dangerous. But what about our special ship, the one that was prepared for a challenge? It ignored both of those paths. The poem tells us it went north. And that is the main question of this entire poem, isn't it? Why choose the hardest path? The north has always been a symbol of the unknown, the difficult, the dangerous journey. So why would this third ship choose to go there? Well, the journey of this third, mysterious ship is what we will explore in our next class. It is the most interesting journey of all.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, sometimes a great storyteller can build an entire world in just a couple of sentences, and that's exactly what we're going to look at today. We're diving into the first 10 lines of Mulk Anand's The Price of Bananas to see how he does it.
Okay, so let's take a look at the text itself. I mean, at first glance, it looks like a guy waiting for a train, right? Pretty simple. But oh, there is so much more going on here. The author is doing some serious work between the lines, painting a picture, setting a mood, and, even hinting at the conflict to come. So the real question is, what's the magic here? What makes this simple description feel so incredibly alive?
All right, let's put on our film director hats for a second. The first thing any director does is set up the establishing shot, right? The big, wide view that tells everyone, okay, this is where we are, and this is when it's happening. It's the bedrock for the whole scene.
So first things first, let's look at the big picture, the canvas the author is painting on. He starts with the place, the physical location, and then he adds this layer of atmosphere, something you can almost feel.
Yeah, you can really picture it, can't you? I mean, this image just nails the vibe. You've got the open platform, the trees, the train just sitting there. And the author does all of this without bogging us down in a ton of detail. It's just so efficient, so powerful.
So, he gives us these 4 core details. We know we're going from Faizabad and to Lucknow. We know there's about half an hour to kill before the train leaves, and we know it's summer. Boom! Just like that, we're totally grounded. We know where we are, what's going on, and what season it is. Simple, but so effective. But then he adds this little gem, this really powerful sensory detail. It's not just summer, it's a hot summer. And that phrase, the rising heat of the summer, that's not just telling you the temperature. No way. It's a tool. It makes the air feel heavy, right? It makes the wait feel even longer. And it creates this kind of simmering tension with all the passengers. And nothing has even happened yet. Okay, so now for the real action on the platform, the monkeys. While all the people are just sitting there, waiting, the author throws in this little pocket of pure chaos and energy. And man, it totally changes the whole vibe of the scene. And check out the word he uses, frolicking. It's such a brilliant choice. He could have just said they were playing or running around, but frolicking, that suggests this fun, wild, maybe even a little mischievous energy, It tells you right away that these guys are playing by a totally different set of rules. And unlike the humans who are just waiting, the monkeys have a plan. They have an agenda. They're watching, they're scavenging, they're getting into position, they're hustling, always looking for an opportunity. They're driven by that one simple, urgent thing, food.
All right, so the train is announced, and now we shift focus. The narrator's whole world suddenly shrinks. It goes from this big, open platform to the inside of a cramped train car, and you can feel the vibe just instantly change. We go from wild, chaotic nature to, well, structured human society.
And what's the narrator's goal now? It's so simple, so orderly, so human. Just find a seat. That's it. His focus goes from watching this whole world unfold to this one tiny specific task. Grab a little piece of personal space.
And this just shows it perfectly, doesn't it? The new environment. It's confined, the seats are all in rows, the window literally frames the outside world like a picture. It's a box, basically. This is the world of human rules, of order, and it's a massive contrast to the total freedom the monkeys have just outside.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's all about this contrast. You've got the monkeys, wild, free, always moving, and then you've got the humans, hot, stuck, and squeezed into a box. The author has basically put these two totally opposite worlds, these two opposing forces, side by side on the exact same train platform. So how does he bring it all together? How does he weave these layers into something alive? Well, he creates this incredible tension just by letting these two completely different worlds exist right next to each other, with nothing but a pane of glass in between.
And when you put these two images together, wow, you can really see it. The contrast is just bam. You've got the wild, sprawling world of the trees versus the straight, rigid lines of the train car. One is all about instinct and freedom, and the other is all about rules and waiting your turn.
And that right there is the absolute genius of this opening. In just a handful of lines, he hasn't just set the scene. No, he set up the entire theme of the story. It's like a pressure cooker, right? You've got the heat, you've got the cramped space, and you've got this wild, chaotic, unpredictable force literally right outside the window.
So you see, all this careful scene setting, it's not just for decoration. It's a promise. It's the author telling the reader, get ready. He's setting up this amazing question. When you put these two worlds, nature and humanity, this close together, whose rules are going to win? And that's what makes you just have to know what happens next. Hello, students, and welcome to our English class. Today, we are going to explore a truly incredible story. It's a classic tale all about survival, courage, and what it really means to be human when you're faced with impossible challenges. So, let's get started, shall we?
Okay, everyone, please get your textbooks out. We're using our Bliss English textbook for Class 9 from the West Bengal Board. I want you all to turn to page 83. We are looking at Lesson 11, which is an adaptation called A Shipwrecked Sailor. Ready? Let's dive right in.
Now, before we get into any story, it's always a good idea to know a little bit about the person who wrote it, right? The author gives us the first clues about the world we're about to enter. So let's meet the man behind this great adventure. So, who was this Daniel Defoe? Well, as you can see, he was an English writer and a journalist who lived a long, long time ago. He's most famous for his novel Robinson Crusoe, and guess what? The story we are reading today is taken from that very book. The text also says he was a prolific and versatile writer. That just means he wrote a huge amount, and on all sorts of different topics. A true master. Okay, now let's get to the heart of the matter, the story itself. You know, the first few lines of any text are absolutely crucial. They set the mood, the tone, everything. So let's look at them very, very closely. Just listen to those words from Crusoe himself. Wow. Right away, notice the words he chooses. Miserable and dismal. These two words, they immediately paint a picture of complete and utter hopelessness, don't they?
So let's think about that word for a second. Dismal. What does this word immediately tell us about this new place where poor Crusoe has washed ashore? It certainly doesn't sound like a very nice place for a vacation, does it?
And this brings us to the meaning. Your book's word nest tells us that dismal means desolate. A desolate place is one that is empty, gloomy, and just sad. There's no comfort there. It's a picture of hopelessness from the very first sentence. In fact, Crusoe was feeling so broken, so lost, that he didn't even give the island a real name. He simply called it the Island of Despair. Just imagine that for a moment, naming your new home Despair. This one small detail tells us everything about his state of mind.
And why was he in such despair? Well, think about his friends, his shipmates who were on the boat with him. How many of them survived the storm? This is the number. 0. Not 1. He was completely, utterly alone. Can you even begin to imagine how that must have felt?
So after this terrible realization sinks in, Crusoe has to somehow survive his very first night. And this is where we see him struggling between this overwhelming fear and, believe it or not, a little bit of unexpected good luck. His worries were very real and very scary. He was terrified of being devoured, which means eaten, by wild animals. He had no food, no fresh water, not even proper clothes or a place to sleep. And to make everything worse, it just kept on raining. What a terrible, terrible situation.
But then, just when it seems like all hope is lost, he sees something. It's a little glimmer of hope. Through the rain, he spots the wreck of his very own ship. The storm had actually pushed it closer to the shore. And suddenly, that broken ship, it becomes his one and only chance for survival.
So he swims out to the wreck and manages to salvage or save whatever he can. He brings back food, some tools like wood and nails, a knife and a gun for protection, even a hammock and some canvas. He also finds ink and paper. But then he finds some money, and you know what he calls it? Useless. It's a fantastic point, isn't it? What good is money when you are alone on a deserted island? It really makes you think about what is truly valuable in life.
Okay, before we go on, let's quickly review a few key words from the text. Understanding these is really important to fully grasp what Crusoe was going through. So we have 3 key words here. Dismal, as we discussed, means desolate or gloomy. Devoured describes his fear of being eaten quickly and hungrily by some wild beast. And a hammock, of course, is that hanging bed he cleverly managed to salvage from the ship. These are very good words to add to your vocabulary. And now, for the final, and I think the most important, part of our lesson today. We've read about Crusoe's situation. We've understood his feelings. Now, it's time for us to put ourselves in his shoes. So, I want you to think about this. You are all alone. The sun is setting. You have a knife, a gun, and a piece of canvas. What is the very first thing you would do to survive the night? Would you try to build a shelter, search for water, maybe climb a tree for safety? You know, there is no single correct answer, but it is a fascinating question to think about. What would your first move be?
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome. So glad you could join me today. We're going to step into our virtual classroom and, explore a really wonderful piece of poetry together. So where are we getting our lesson from today? Well, it's from a book many of you will know well, the Class 9 English textbook, Bliss, from our very own West Bengal board. And we're going to be diving right into the poem, Hunting Snake. Now, before we start, I want you to think for a second. Have you ever been just walking somewhere and suddenly you see a wild animal? Maybe a bird or a mongoose, anything really, and it just makes you stop in your tracks? You just stare, right? That feeling, that sudden, quiet wonder, that's exactly what this poem captures. All right, so as you can see, our lesson for today is the poem Hunting Snake by Judith Wright. It's a really powerful and I think a truly beautiful piece of writing. So you might be wondering, what's this poem all about? Well, at its heart, it's about a very personal experience the poet had, simply watching a black snake. But, it's not just about watching, it's about seeing this creature while it's actually hunting, and all the powerful feelings that come up in that one single moment. Okay, now, before we jump into any poem, I always think it's a good idea to know a little bit about the person who wrote it, isn't it? So, let's take a quick moment to meet our poet. So, this is Judith Wright. She was a very famous Australian poet, but, and this is really important, she wasn't just a poet. She was also a very dedicated environmentalist. Now, why is that so crucial? Well, because so much of her poetry, especially this one, really explores that deep and sometimes complicated relationship between us, humans, and the natural world. Okay, class. Now it's time for the reading. I'm going to read the first part of the poem out loud, and as I'm reading, I want you to really try and picture the scene in your mind. Listen for the images she creates and just try to feel the mood. Sun-warmed in the late season's grace, under the autumn's gentlest sky, we walked and froze half through a pace. See that? Notice the calm, beautiful setting she paints for us. Sun-warmed, gentlest sky. You can just feel it. A perfect autumn day. And then, bam! Suddenly, everything stops. We walked and froze half through a pace. That peaceful feeling is just shattered. And why? Why did they stop? The great black snake went reeling by. Now think about that word, great. It doesn't just mean big, does it? It suggests something impressive, something powerful. And just look at how she describes its movement. Head down, tongue flickering on the trail. He quested through the parting grass. Wow, you can almost see it, can't you? The snake is totally focused, just locked on its mission. And then this line, sun glazed his curves of diamond scale, and we lost breath to see him pass. What beautiful imagery! The sun is hitting its scales, making them sparkle like diamonds. And look at the reaction of the people watching. We lost breath. It was literally a breathtaking sight. And then she makes us think, doesn't she? What track he followed, what small food, fled living from his fierce intent. We're reminded of the snake's purpose. It's hunting. There's a fierce intent here. A real life and death drama is happening, and the people are just silent observers of this raw, powerful act of nature. Okay, beautiful reading, but now let's do what we do in English class. Let's unpack these lines. We need to look really closely at the words the poet chose, because that's where we find all the deeper meaning. Let's start with this line again. The great black snake went reeling by. I want to focus on that one word she uses to describe the movement, reeling. What a fantastic choice of word. So what does reeling mean? Well, our word nest tells us it means moving in curves. It's not straight or stiff at all. Just try to imagine that fluid, flowing, S-shaped movement a snake makes as it goes. That is the picture the word reeling paints in our minds. All right, next up, head down, tongue flickering on the trail. This line is packed with great words, but let's look at two of them that give us a really vivid picture of how the snake is, well, sensing everything around it. Flickering and trail. So flickering, as you see, is that quick in and out movement. That's the snake's tongue, right? It's how it actually smells the air. And what is it looking for? It's searching for the trail, the path of whatever it's hunting. And now for this one. He quested through the parting grass. Look at that verb, quested. The poet could have said he searched, but she chose quested. It's a much stronger word, don't you think? Quested does mean searched, of course, but it has a much more serious feeling. It makes you think of a knight on a grand quest, searching for something very important. And for the snake, this hunt is important. It's about survival. So that word, quested, gives the snake a real sense of purpose, even dignity. And we have to come back to this line. It's just absolutely stunning. Sun glazed his curves of diamond scale. Think about the word glazed, like a shiny coating on a pot, and diamond scale. I mean, it tells us that in that moment, this creature looked so beautiful, almost precious. And have a look at this. This drawing from our textbook is an artist trying to capture that very image. You can almost see the sunlight hitting those scales, can't you? Just like the poet described. It just goes to show how powerful words can be, creating a picture right there in your mind. So let's put all of this together. You have the calm day, the sudden appearance of this focused, intense hunter, the beauty of its scales in the sun. What's the overall feeling the poet is trying to share with us? I think this next line is the absolute heart of the whole experience. And we lost breath to see him pass. Think about it. They didn't scream. They didn't run away. They simply lost breath. This is a reaction of pure awe, pure wonder at seeing such a perfect and powerful moment of nature up close. And that brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with. In a situation where, let's be honest, many of us would have felt fear, the poet and her companion felt awe. So why? Why do you think that is? What does it tell us about how they see nature and the wild creatures we share our world with? Have a think about that. Thank you so much for your attention today.